Hi, everybody. My name's Dan. I write horror, fantasy, and science fiction, and I talk about games on the internet. Today, I want to talk about Strange New Worlds, which is the second of the two big mission compendiums for Star Trek Adventures. Star Trek Adventures is my favorite RPG, and I talk about it all the time. And this is a selection of 9 adventures, and 7 of them are great. 5 of them are fantastic. 2 of them I didn't like very much. We'll go through in order, and I will try to keep this spoiler-free as much as possible. And I'm going to go in order from the ones I don't like all the way up to the ones that I absolutely love and adore. And so it's going to sound really negative for a couple of minutes, and then we're going to get to the good stuff. Because really, genuinely, of the 9, 7 are wonderful, and I recommend the entire book without hesitation. But in case you're curious, here's the breakdown. So let's get in. Number 9, the one that I think is the least interesting. Here. Let's have a look right here. Is called No Good Deed. And I don't like No Good Deed very much. One cool thing that you'll notice here is that the graphic design of the adventure book has follows the look and feel of that era's TV shows. So this is an original series era adventure, and so it kind of looks kind of original series-ish. And the Enterprise one looks very Enterprise-y, and the Next Gen ones look very Next Gen. So it's a neat thing. Yeah, so that's what I wanted to say about that. Hooray for that. The other thing that I wanted to mention, as long as we're talking about time periods, is that any of the 9 adventures can be played in any of the time periods. And there's only 1 or 2 cases where you would have to do some major modification. The one Enterprise one, you probably have to bulk up the enemy ship a little bit so that the fight is more challenging for a more modern ship. Tiny little things like that. There's one that kind of relies on knowing Ferengi culture, and so if you play that before the Next Gen era, when Federation has not yet had any contact with Ferengi, then that one loses a lot of its depth. But any of them can be played anywhere with relatively minimal adaptation, and some of them with no adaptation at all. Anyway, so No Good Deed here is basically you answer a distress call, and your ship goes to check out this planet, and they find that everyone on the planet is dead, and they find that there's these 2 species, and they kind of piece things together. And what I really didn't like about this, first of all, is that there's this person, Ambassador Parrot, or Parrot, however you want us to pronounce that. She exists as the most obvious GM insert character I've ever seen in a published adventure. Her entire job is to tell the characters what to do at literally every decision point. And sometimes she steps in and she just gives them information for free and on incredibly flimsy principle. One of the species on this planet was avian. And so you get down to the planet and you look and you're like, wow, look at all these big buildings. This is nuts. And then it says in the little GM notes, it says, Ambassador Perrette, through her, knowledge of predator species, knows that the center of government was the tallest building. And you don't have to try, you don't have to think. With that just incredibly paper-thin reasoning, it's like, okay, stop thinking and move on to the next set piece of the deal. What really kills this one for me, though, is just the sheer volume of the read alouds. And actually, that's both of the 2 adventures I don't like. This one has, for example, almost this entire page is read alouds, and it's stuff from logs that you're supposed to find, and you can't understand the purpose of the adventure without reading these. But you can 100% complete the adventure without reading these, which is a sign to me that it's all just kind of The purpose of the adventure doesn't matter. Um, this also, the one of the species involved is allegedly Zindi, and there is no point whatsoever in the adventure where your characters figure that out. It just mentions it in the notes up front, and then for the early part you're like, this weird avian species, and then maybe Ambassador Perret mentions it at some point that they might be Zindi, and then the adventure just refers to them as Zindi for the entire second half, as if you had taken the time to figure this all out. And it's not a good adventure, and it frustrates me, and I'm going to stop talking about it now. The next one is actually the very next one in the book, called The Whole of the Law. This one is about a pleasure planet, sort of. It is this thing. Let's take a look. So they have this disk. This black line here represents this hyper dense disk in which everything is that separates the two sides of this kind of space station thingy. And there's the light side and there's the dark side. And the dark side is kept that way artificially. The idea is that it's a pleasure planet and you can do anything you want. And on the light side, you can do anything you want as long as you don't hurt anyone. And on the dark side, you can do anything you want, including hurting other people. But no one goes there unless they like sign the waiver that says, I am okay with being hurt. I accept this as part of coming here in the first place. And again, like the other one, it is just filled. Look at all this blue text. Just read alouds and read alouds out the wazoo. And the adventures is not very interesting. It spends so much time trying to tell you what this weird spinny disc is and how it functions and all of that. And then you get into this, I don't know. I didn't like it. I'm not going to talk about it anymore. Let's talk about the ones that are good, okay? This is another original series episode. It's called Drawing Deeply from the Well. This one is fun. It also relies, like the disc one, on a really in-depth description of a technology. In this case, it's a skyhook. A skyhook is not a thing that exists, but a thing that's been theorized for decades by science fiction writers and scientists. Basically, a way of having kind of a counterbalanced thingy that rotates and can dip down into a gravity well and then come back up, and would be a very cost-effective way of getting things out of that gravity well. So, for example, getting ships or people into orbit, or in this case, mining a gas giant. And so the premise behind it is that this is an alien megastructure that nobody knows who built it, and it's just there. And the Federation found it, let's say a year ago, and they've spent that time figuring out what it is and then repairing it, and they finally have it back online again, and it dips down into this incredibly hostile gas giant, but it keeps getting damaged. And there's mounting evidence that the damage taking place is a deliberate attack. And so then they start to suspect maybe this is Klingons, maybe this is somebody else. And they bring the characters in, the players, to investigate this and figure out who is attacking their ship. Is someone trying to sabotage their project? And so on and so on. And it turns into a much more interesting story than that. It's honestly a very good adventure overall. The only reason that I have it so low on my list is because it's very short. So much of the space is taken up with describing what the skyhook is and how a skyhook works and so on, that the actual adventure is fairly straightforward. And I think that in order to really make it work, if I were to run this, I would add in one or two kind of major complications, like an extra saboteur or something like that, to give this a little more texture and let the characters, struggle against something more than just a pure voyage of discovery that ends very quickly. So anyway, very good stuff, despite my complaints. All right, next up the other original series episode. It's not. I'm not marking them low because they're original series. It just happens to be that the original series ones don't work as well for me. They might work really great for you. But like I said, once we got past those first two, everything else in here is wonderful. It's just a little lower on the list than everything else. So Plato's Cave. This is a really fun one because it is like a. It's almost like a ghost story, and I don't think that all of it holds together well in the end. Up until the very final moments, this is virtually a flawless Star Trek role playing game scenario. It has opportunities for science, for engineering, for solving problems, for discovering new things. It has opportunities for talking to people. The only problem is once you figure out what the villain is, so to speak, quote unquote, who the antagonist really is and what the antagonist is trying to do, then it just kind of throws you in there and says, okay, solve this problem. And let's be clear, the reason that I have this one as low as I do, the only option that is feasibly presented in the scenario for dealing with that antagonist is to kill them. It kind of pays lip service to the idea that you might be able to talk to them or save them, but no, you kill them, and that's the only thing. And yes, they do go out of their way to present that as a moral conundrum, okay? That they are saying, because of the Prime Directive, because of this, because of that, because of all these Starfleet things, you should want to act this way, even though the circumstances are forcing you to act this way. And so there's a lot to be said, I think, for, especially in Star Trek, for putting the players into that place where there isn't really a good answer. I just wish that they had spent a little more time or a little more effort to allow the players to make their own choice between the two impossible options rather than just being forced into one of them. Because yes, either one is going to involve a moral compromise of some kind. Either one of them is going to involve something. But I guarantee that a significant portion of the player base that plays this is going to want to do the other one that this adventure assumes nobody's going to want to do. And there's just no rules left to handle it. There's no description of, well, what if we try to do this? What happens then? It's frustrating. Anyway, let's move on. The next block, so that was 9 through 6. The next block, 5, 4, and 3, are essentially interchangeable. They are tied for third place, in my opinion, because they are all wonderful. And I would absolutely love running any of these adventures. So even though I'm going to say one of them is 5 and the other one is 4, consider them all more or less tied. Okay? So this one is called A Cry from the Void. And I really love this one. This is the one that I mentioned has a Ferengi in it. And basically the players get a distress call, but it's a crazy, weird distress call. There's this massive Tetryon burst that they can't figure out what's going on, and they find buried inside of that Tetryon burst a message, a distress call. But they can't figure out who sent it or why it was attached to this enormous, damaging Tetryon burst. And they follow it, and they come to this planet that is all entirely crystalline. And then it has this very mineral-heavy ocean. And there is a Ferengi there that is running an unlicensed mining operation. And so then you start, dealing with that. And is there something criminal going on here? And what do we do? Well, at the same time, trying to figure out, well, who sent this distress signal? What's going on? It turns into a very intriguing premise. I mean, very intriguing story. I already told you the premise. And I don't want to give any more details than I already have because I don't want to spoil it. But you end up searching the bottom of the ocean for lost people. You end up having this very interesting kind of diplomacy situation with the Ferengi and with her Euridian first in command kind of person, second in command. And so there's a lot of options. Everyone on the crew, from the helm to the doctor to the science, the engineer, the captain, everybody is going to have something interesting to do in this adventure. And it involves some tricky moral conundrums, some tricky questions about how should we act and how should we handle this. Just like the other one did, only handled way better. It's a really fantastic scenario. So hooray for Cry from the Void. Next up is called The Cure Worse Than the Disease. This is actually the Enterprise era one. So check out how enterprisey this looks. Like Cry from the Void, super next gen, and we already saw a bunch of the original series, and then we have this enterprisey one. So Enterprise, this Cure Worse than the Disease. I guess I shouldn't leave that up because players could read it and get all the spoilers anyway. So this one is a distress call from a planet that says, "Hey, come help us. We eradicated this plague a long time ago, and now it's back. What do we do? You got to help us out." And the players get there and they see that there's a huge ring around the planet, but the ring is artificial. The way that they cured, quote unquote, their disease is that they built this giant ring around the planet to bombard it constantly with radiation that kills the virus. And this, for 200 years, has kept them all kind of weak and sickly, but alive. The virus hasn't wiped them out. And now, all of a sudden, the one portion of the virus that managed to survive this bombardment of radiation has just gotten better and stronger, and natural selection over the years has selected for this incredibly radiation-resistant strain of the virus that is killing everyone on the planet, just wiping out continents. Maybe not the best scenario to throw at your players right now in the middle of a pandemic, but still really interesting. And so trying to figure out, well, what do we do? How can we deal with this? And it's a really cool thing. And there's a lot more to it than what I am hinting at. Okay? But the idea, that core premise of we need to solve this is there. And I do like how they incorporated the plague, the disease, into the adventure. And a big important part of everything that you do is taking the proper safety precautions at every step so that no one on your ship gets sick. But it's still possible that in the process of trying to help these people, that you might end up exposed or infected, and that adds this whole extra layer of clock to the end of it, and to tension as you struggle to solve their problems while also, dealing with increasing illness on your own ship. So it's really cool, and I like it a lot. So there you go. Cure Worse Than the Disease. Lastly, the very last one in the book, the Angstrom Operation. This one is also wonderful. All three of these are really wonderful. This one uses the... I can't even tell you what it uses because that's a spoiler. Let's just say this. On the edge of Cardassian space, you have received a very distressing distress call from a group of scientists that are on this tidally locked world. And they've been there, they've been doing some kind of science experiment, but you don't know what. And you're trying, and then something happened to them. And so the early parts of it, me being me, this one and the next one are both horror scenarios, and that might be a big part of why I like them. But I'm not just giving them extra points for being horror, because it's very hard to do horror well, and they have done horror very well here, in that you arrive at this station and find that it is completely just filled with corpses, and it looks like they killed each other. And then you start to suspect that maybe there is some kind of parasite driving them to kill each other. And that's not really a spoiler because you learn it pretty early on. figuring out what happened, how to solve it, all becomes very difficult. And then, of course, you're right on the border of Cardassian space, and the Cardassians show up in the end and cause a bunch of problems. So if you haven't managed to do everything by then you're going to have to do it all with Cardassians breathing down your neck. I really like the open-endedness of this one as well. It presents you with all of these options, with all of the information, and then says, okay, see what you can do. And there's no railroady plot taking you through it. It's just, here's the problem, can you solve it? And so the kind of conclusion at the end says it's possible that they might solve everything and fix everything and make everyone wonderful and heal people and get away from the Cardassians and save the science project. It's also entirely possible that everything could go wrong and they could get attacked and the stuff will blow up and the information will be lost and they'll be pariahs forever. And there's a whole spectrum in between there. So it's a difficult scenario, but a really intriguing one, and one that will reward clever players for being clever, which is what Star Trek's all about. So hooray for that. All right, top two. You may also consider these essentially interchangeable. They're tied for first place. The one that I have picked for first place, I picked for a reason, and we'll get there. But first, let's talk about this one. It is called, boom, Darkness. This one is another horror scenario. And it starts with a very, very similar premise in which you receive a distress call, something's going down at a science outpost, you arrive, and what you find in this case is completely different. You know, that early setup is the same, but then everything else is wildly different. In this case, the planet is black as night. Okay? The atmosphere has been completely filled with something dark. It is impenetrable to vision and to sensors. And in fact, when you get down there, and you'll have to fly down in a shuttle, you can only see about 2 meters because the atmosphere is just so thick. And so you need to figure out, well, why is the atmosphere suddenly changed? Why are the sensors being disrupted instead of just visual sight? And what happened to all these scientists? Whereas in the previous one, you find a station full of corpses. In this one, you find a station full of nothing. You don't know where these people went. You don't know what's happening. And then when the clues start to appear, it gets worse and worse. And so you're kind of in this situation of, well, we need to start everything up again. We need to get their computer running because then we'll be able to see what happened to them. And then we'll have to do all of this. And it does not go in the direction that you think it's going to go. And I'm trying to be very cagey about the plot here. Let's just suffice it to say that they use all of the trappings of a really fantastic kind of haunted planet horror story to tell something that has a very different core to it. Really wonderful stuff, really great science fiction, uses the rules of the game, uses the tropes of the show, all to tell a really fantastic story. So hooray for Darkness. Last of all, this is the one that I would pick as the best one. Your mileage may vary. You might not like this one as much as I do. But it's called Footfall. And the reason I really love this one is because it's less about the science. There's certainly science in there, but it's more about the culture. It's about society. It's about tricky questions, specifically of religion. The premise is that there is a planet that has become a holy site for many, many religions. Dozens, if not hundreds of religions from all across the galaxy have decided that this planet is important to them. And in fact, many of them have come to agree on the kind of central premise that when the Creator built the universe, he wanted a good place to stand so that he could admire its beauty, and this is where he chose to stand and look at it. Hence the name Footfall. The planet is the Creator's footfall. And so it's kind of become this carefully maintained neutral planet where anyone who wants to come and worship can, without regard for where they come from, or what religion they are, or what nationality they are. It's ostensibly part of the Federation, but people can come from the Klingon Empire, from wherever they want, and set down and worship as they will. And so, yes, of course, there's a story that springs out. There's one particular group there that started harassing people and causing problems, and you need to figure out why. And then there are literal angels and demons that show up in it. And it all, first of all, has a wonderfully Star Trek-y explanation for everything that's happening. But B, second of all, the adventure really goes out of its way to turn this into I don't want to say a debate, let's say a discussion of religion and secular belief. So, for example, here in the prelude, it says, before you start, consider giving each character some kind of prelude scene where they can interact with their own belief system in some way. And there's several options for purely secular characters who have no religious belief. And then there's an entire page of various options for people who do have religious belief. And this is kind of broken down. There's a bunch of general suggestions, and then there's very specific species suggestions. If you are Trill, here's what you might believe. Here's how you might interact with this. And so it is an opportunity, and this is why I love this adventure. It's an opportunity for the game master to get together with the players and say, okay, we're going to tell a story that involves religion. And I would really love to turn this into almost a Star Trek episode feel, where we get to discuss, not necessarily the merits or the value or the trueness of religion, because we don't want to, you don't want to start a fight with your own player group, but just let the characters develop in some interesting ways. Let them talk about their beliefs. And, you could go back to something like Deep Space Nine and look at the conversations between Jadzia Dax, who was very a-religious, but had a close relationship with, the Klingon beliefs in Sto-vo-kor and all of that. And then someone like Worf, who had a very strong belief in those, the Klingon religion and the Klingon afterlife. And then compare that to someone like Kira, who had this she was almost entirely defined by her faith in the Bajoran religion. And then compare that to someone like Sisko, who was completely a-religious and atheist, but was considered by many to be a god or godlike. And so, while this really interesting story is going on, and there's problems you have to solve, and there's mysteries you have to figure out, there's also the opportunity to have this very Star Trek-y discussion and let the players represent different sides of that question and kind of discuss their own personal connection to religion and secular belief. So anyway, I'm gushing at this point about the adventure, but it's a really compelling adventure because of that. The story that it's telling is good, but what makes it great is this chance to layer all this extra stuff on top of it and say, okay, I'm not just going to throw scientific conundrums at you all night. We're going to have a little different style of adventure. And if that's your kind of thing, like it is for me, then you're going to adore this, and that's going to be great. Awesome. So that's what this book is. I do want to take a chance to show you a couple of other things. Okay? So first of all, one thing that I don't like a ton about this book is that everything in it, that almost none of the adventures has a really strong hook to it. There's really nothing that says, hey, you guys need to go and do this. And what I began to suspect, it never says this overtly anywhere in the book, but what I began to suspect is that they are relying on these captain's logs as the hook to get you into the adventure. So there's no you never receive a distress call. You never are given orders by an admiral. The way this book has decided to play it is that you're already en route somewhere and you've already been given your mission, and then there's a little captain's log that you read out loud, and that tells you what you're doing. And I really don't like that at all for a number of reasons. I think that it takes away a lot of player agency. Yes, the players are going to choose to accept the mission anyway because they're Starfleet officers, but to literally put words into the mouths of your players, to say, not only words but personality into the mouth of whoever is playing your captain, just doesn't sit well with me at all, and it bothers me a lot. Also, the fact that storytelling conceit is never explained. It was actually not until Darkness that I got something that specifically mentioned the captain's log, and I'm like, okay, that's the first real confirmation here that we are supposed to be treating the captain's logs as the story hooks to get us into it. It also doesn't make a ton of sense because, let's look at this, there's the captain's log, but then there's other logs that are just kind of seeded all throughout here. Captain Starlog supplemental, like, narratively that makes no sense to me, that there would be supplemental logs throughout. Are we supposed to read them out loud? Is the captain supposed to read them out loud? What if the... it just doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. But the good news is, as long as you know how to give your players a hook to start an adventure, you can ignore them, which is essentially what I did as I was reading them. I also wanted to talk about just the really fantastic art all through this. This is, I wish I could show you 2 pages at once. Way on the very back, let's go zip. There's this really cool picture here of a shuttle coming down to an ice world. All of this neat stuff in here. And then just the art throughout is... it makes good use of maps. It makes good use of the little character stats and things. I'm starting, as I've been doing these reviews and as I've actually been writing for a few official published RPG supplements, I've been starting to notice more and more the way that different companies and different publishers format their adventures. And I really like the way that Modiphius does theirs. I think they do a really good job with it. I wish that they'd done their story hooks in a different way for this particular volume, but overall, I do like their style, their philosophy of how to present a story in adventure form. So, kudos to them. Overall, like I said, I recommend this book without hesitation. The 2 adventures that I don't like would be relatively easy to adapt, and then the other 7 are all wonderful, including 2 that I find especially and particularly amazingly good. So, yay. I mean, this is a no-brainer for me. If you like Star Trek, if you want to play the Star Trek RPG, I would absolutely pick this up. I think overall it is even better than the first volume of Scenarios, and I really loved that one too. So, grab it. Anyway, thank you for watching my little show, and my name's Dan Wells, and you are awesome.